Hey, this is Dave with Taboo Customs. It's actually my birthday today, so I decided that instead of working on our house and other projects and the business things that actually take a little bit of time, try to hit one of my own projects. The only project I've really got going on right now is the CJ5. Now, we already did part 1 teardown, so if you haven't seen that video, you can go back, check that video where we stripped the tub off of this 1980 CJ5. So today what we're gonna do is just basically a little time lapse of going through, stripping down the rest of the frame. The goal is to get the frame completely stripped down so that I can get it a little bit cleaned up and sent off to our sandblaster so that they can sandblast it, bring it back so we can repair that frame. So let's take a quick look at what we're dealing with. All right, so if you haven't seen the first video, what we have is a 1980 CJ5. Now, the reason we're going through and doing this build is that my first Jeep was a 77 CJ5. I drove that Jeep for a long time, so I've always wanted to take another CJ5, build it up. Just basically going to build a nice CJ5 that is somewhat modernized, somewhat comfortable, and can basically just be driven daily for us. We will be putting a V8 in it probably, but we've still got to determine some of that. Right now, it did have a 258 in it. Came with a T176 4-speed, Dana 300. May reuse those or not. Of course, we don't know if we're going to reuse the axles yet either. So there's a lot still to be determined on this build. It's something that's going to go through and be done slow. Now, going through and tearing down a lot of this stuff, we're not going to keep, brake lines and everything. We're just going to trash because we'll completely replace those whenever we build this up new. A lot of the other larger components we will probably throw over there on a pallet and keep just to make sure, we're not sure yet if we're going to reuse those or if we're going to replace with new. But if anything, we'll be able to refer back to them. Now, a lot of the hardware, we've actually got a box. I like to keep a lot of the hardware, partially for the same reason. We probably won't use a lot of the hardware. We'll probably replace it, but at least we'll have it for a frame of reference whenever we're doing the build, instead of trying to guess what length the size bolt was. We'll go ahead and put that over there. A lot of times I'll also take and bag these up and actually label them, but for this build we're probably just going to go ahead and throw all of this in a box, since we're pretty familiar with all this hardware and not too concerned about this. So let's get started. Tear down. So before we move on, let's talk a little bit about the drive shafts, because there is some tips here I can give you. Now, on the CJs here in their stock form, they've got caps for the U-joint, or straps, sorry. And those straps are held on by some pretty small bolts. Now, in the older versions of the CJs, well, all CJs I think, these are 1/4 inch and they are 12-point. So make sure whenever you're taking them off, you have a 12-point socket. Now, when we started there, we were actually trying to use a 1/4 inch drive 12-point socket. Wasn't working. The first one stripped out, so we just cut it and we just cut the rest. Now, that is one option. Whenever we are going through these and, we're gonna end up replacing the U-joints, the straps, probably the yokes as well, we can go through and cut those without an issue. Now, when we do that, you can kind of see how I cut it. Make sure I cut basically through the strap and into the U-joint, because U-joint is easily replaceable. I'm going to replace them anyway. That way we stay out of the yoke in case we want to reuse the yoke. Now, I did recall how much issue we've had with this in the past, and I remember buying a specific socket just to get these out. And that is actually this socket here. So this is a deep well 1/4 inch 12-point socket, and this came from gearwrench, and these work really good because you've kind of got to get past the yoke to get down there to that small bolt. So if you do want to get these out cleanly, I do recommend this gearwrench socket. I could put a link in the description if you're wanting to go buy one of these. So let's get to pulling out the rest of the transmission and transfer case. So working from front to rear in the frame, we went ahead and pulled the steering box there. And one thing you can expect if you pull that steering box is those bolts in the bottom, if they come out cleanly, you know, you've got some good luck. We had one break, so we actually did pretty well. But if you look at that bolt, if you can see it, if it's in focus, I mean, it's pretty bad shape. So oftentimes those will break. You know, when we get to repairing this frame, we'll go through how we're gonna fix that broken bolt up in there. We'll see what we can do with it, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So we continue working down the rest of the frame and see what we get. All right, so what we've had happen is something that commonly happens with leaf-sprung Jeeps when you go to take them apart, and that's the shackle, or not the shackle bolt, but the spring eye bolt back here in the rear is seized up on the bushing in the actual leaf spring. I was surprised when the rear came apart easily, so of course the front's going to be difficult. We've only got a few options whenever we have this happen. We tried, of course, knocking out the hammer. Rarely actually gets it loose, but tried it. So now we've basically got to go in and we've got to cut this bolt. You've got two options when you cut the bolts. You can cut them on the outside of the spring hanger, but then you're going to have to pry the spring hanger open to get the leaf out, or you can cut on the inside. Now, since we hammered on the spring hanger a little bit, we actually opened it up on the inside a little bit already, so I'll go in and at least cut the one side on the inside, might cut the other side on the outside. We'll have to kind of see. Now we're going to use a hard wheel for this. You can use a Sawzall, but it's kind of tough. If you use a hard wheel, obviously you got to have a lot of meat left on your hard wheel, so we'll see how this goes. All right, so here we are. We've got the frame fully stripped down, and unfortunately I've got some bad news. One, you know, I expected the rust. I saw this rust, wasn't surprised by that. There's a little bit more back in here. I'm a little bit worried about the top of the frame and how thin it seems. There was more rust on the driver's side in the center section here than I had anticipated. I had seen a little bit, but hadn't seen that it gone all the way basically where the transfer case skid plate was, all the way up in front of the spring hanger. All that is pretty much gone. But that's not the worst problem. The worst problem is, and I don't know if you can tell, but if you look, that left front of the frame might look higher in your video. And that's because I do believe that it is. It does measure higher sitting on the ground, and there's probably a couple inches that the frame is cockeyed. So, doesn't look great. I was already debating trying to find another frame anyway, so might try looking at that. I do have a CJ5 frame. I guess worst case scenario, I could try to shorten that because it is a very solid frame, but I'd hate to cut it up because it is solid. But anyway. Sorry, ran out of battery on the GoPros. We were talking about the new woes of our twisted CJ5 frame. If it wasn't so rusted, we might try to fix it, square it away. We're gonna be doing a lot of fabrication to the frame anyway, but right now, I think with the rust and the twist, we're probably going to go ahead and look for a new frame. So we'll see what we find for this project here in the future. Now, it's not a total lost cause. We will be using that frame to develop some rust repair kits because, well, it obviously is pretty rusted, so we can get those on there. Probably can go ahead and use the frame to put together some videos, but unfortunately may not ever use that frame for any projects. At the end, we'll probably end up just scrapping it out or seeing what else we do with it. Now, if you are looking for rust repair kits, you can visit our website, taboocustoms.com. We also sell skid plates and other items there. You can also go there, contact us, ask us any questions. We also have some link to some projects that we have done in the past, so you can go there and check it out. So thank you for watching, and as always, a like or subscribe is greatly appreciated.